You're part of history. You get to say that you bought pizza with Bitcoin. Come on, this is like you gotta glorify that.
Maybe that should be the tagline.
The F word that most people dread is failure. They give up once they fail, but people like Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. When a reporter asked, "How did it feel to fail 1,000 times?" Edison replied, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. Inventing the light bulb was a 1,000-step process." This just proves that failure is just a perception. And if you think that Edison was some sort of a genius and isn't relatable, in this video, I bring to you a story of an ordinary person, but with an extraordinary amount of grit to work on big goals and dreams. As the story unfolds, you'll learn that failure can be something to pride and a source of tremendous learnings. So, my guest today has left his $500,000 job and he started a startup going into the unknown, into the wild, and this transition can be scary. His paycheck not only went down to zero, but he had enormous expenses running his startup, and that can lead to disappointment, fear of failure, and so many other emotions that run high. So today we are going to be talking to Vinay Jain, who has been an engineer, a manager at big companies like Facebook, and he's been trying to carve his own path from engineering to management to product management to starting startups to hiring his own employees and everything in between. There are so many lessons to be learned from his story. So I am really excited to welcome my guest, Vinay. Hi, Vinay. How are you doing?
Doing great. Super excited to chat with you over now.
Awesome. All right. So let's get right into it. My first question is that what made you decide to quit your comfort zone, quit this big coveted job? Probably millions of people want a job like that at Facebook, and then just go dive into the wild and say, no, this is enough. I'm going to start my own company. How did that entire story come along?
I joined a company that had already been acquired, right? And there I saw a very successful exit. And so I got to learn a lot from like, what did the founders do right? And it pretty much started from day one, where like the company got acquired by Home Depot, and Home Depot had seen that company pitch in TechCrunch Disrupt. So they were like hip tight since day one. And so that was an eye opener. It's like, how do you, start off like figure out a domain, build the right relationships, and then build a really good business and, eventually have a successful part. Yeah, so that's one area that I would say I spent a disproportionate amount of time during my startup, was just like networking, finding the right people to connect and get good validation from, right? So in the case of a mentor, I was like, look, what are we trying to build here? We are trying to build a developer tool company. Okay, great. It's in the US. Okay, great. Now, the simple search was like, what are the developer tools companies in the past that have, actually been successful? And I was like, okay, like handful of them came up. It's very easy. Go to Crunchbase, go look at dev tools. And if you're in this market, you start researching, things start showing up, right? Like, so we were in mobile testing. So I was like, who's done anything with mobile testing in the last 10 years that has been successful? Okay, great. Now that you get this list, then you just go riff off like LinkedIn and you see like who were the CEOs, founders who were there from the start, right? So then I was able to triangulate into one of those companies getting acquired by Facebook. And I was like, wait, this guy had worked with him, right? And so I was like, oh, now it all adds up that his company was a developer tool company. So I was like, there you go. I exactly knew 3 to 4 people. So there was one company that got acquired by Amazon, which was the Amazon's mobile farm. Second was acquired by Facebook. And there was a third one, there was this successful testing infra company. And I actually didn't know any one of them. And then it was just a cold email on LinkedIn, a thoughtful email, which was like, amazing work. I'm on this journey. I would love to pick your brains and show you what we are doing. And they were very responsive. And then I built like a very healthy relationship with one of them. And they were actually very excited because they were like, okay, we were successful. And so you can actually take some of our learnings back forward. And it wasn't just like meet or greet, casual conversations. It was very deep. Like, I mean, the first time I met the mentor, it was actually a good value exchange because the way he looked at the mobile app market was very similar to what I had looked at, but we had differences in terms of how we were segmenting it. So it was a very rich conversation, which is why even the mentor then gets interested to go deeper. So you need to bring value, you need to have done your homework, and it needs to be real in terms of like engaging with them. But that's kind of how I started, which is, just to sum it up, what are you trying to do? Find people who've done it before and just go reach out to them with a genuine ask and do your homework. By the end, we did realize that we were pushing way more than what would have been the case if the problem was real, right? So that's where we hit. But then every conversation was successful because we were like learning exactly what is it that they would have instead liked, or what are the other ways we could add value. So when we took those 60 interviews and we had some patterns, there were other directions we could go. So in our case, it was localization testing, which was like testing different languages was a nightmare, and they were doing it manually. And they were like, why don't you just take this product and kind of tweak it to make it into localization? So it was a very clear pivot that we could have tried as well. And so at that point, me and my co-founder were like 1 year in, and he wasn't too keen on trying another pivot, having gone through the 3 startup journey. So the choice in my hand was like, can I go solo? Should I recruit a new co-founder or this? And so I gave it a shot. I mean, I tried to operate solo for a few months, and then I just realized that it's probably best for me to take a mental reset, figure out the next steps, explore my options, and then evaluate. And then the next step there was, we had very good IP, we had very good experience with our company in this domain. So I reached out to a lot of companies which didn't have this product in their suite, and we actually spoke to a bunch of companies for an acquisition. And so we were able to, I would say, again, talk to 10 companies. I demoed the product. Clearly, we didn't have like the market traction that was required or like solid revenue, but we had an acqui-hire offer. So a company was ready to hire me and my co-founder, pretty senior roles reporting into the CEO. And this was like a SaaS company that was, making a north of like $50 to $100 million a year. So it was a very successful exit potentially for us. So that was on the table for us. But then in parallel, at that juncture, I was like, let me just explore and evaluate what our competing offer from a big company would look like. And then, Facebook came along the way. And then we just decided that it's best that, I joined Facebook, and then maybe in the future again jump in. So the net is like, even though it was a failure that we hit a roadblock, but I actually think by the end, 2 options opened up. One, we had a very clear acquisition offer and a relationship with a company of actually reporting into a CEO, which was very rare. And then 2, I was able to actually transition from an Eng route to a PM route without having done MBA, without having burned 200K. And I was leveled up equally well as an EM. And that was purely because of my startup experience. So failure just opened up more options is how I looked at it. So I was very glad that, I was able to go kind of off track, take the risk, and still net out at something that is net positive for me in my career.
This piece was the most brilliant part of this whole video interview that we are doing, like that you went for it, you took that risk, took out all your time, did all this work with so much energy, and then eventually you got rewarded. So again, I air quote failure. This was one of the most successful things that I've heard being done, because you were ready to learn and make something out of this experience. And again, like you said, you didn't have to dump $200,000 into an MBA to get the same job, but you were able to go out in the world and do what you loved, literally execute on every case study that MBA would have taught you, but just execute it by yourself and then got yourself this job. So this was brilliant. I mean, bravo. Congratulations on this is a big achievement, because this is not something we are taught in schools, right? We just go learn the theory and then here be obedient and just do what you're told. But carving your own path like this with so much financial distress and other things that feel so risky and so unknown, and still being able to conquer that is a real achievement. It's awesome.
Yeah, I would almost go out on a limb and say if you want to transition to a product route and if you think that the MBA is blocking you, just go start something.
Right.
You have better odds of being successful at the startup. If not, there is a very high likelihood anyone will lap you up for a product if you've done well and you've actually like worked hard on that startup.
Right.
So that's your trick to transition.
I have no words. This is brilliant. I'm definitely, it's very relatable because I just feel like the education in this day and age has become a commodity. It's something that people attach to their value, like ego, and feel more valuable if they have this degree. But what is a degree without execution? And you actually did this 18 months worth of work, and this is what the MBA would have taught you anyway. So execution has way more weight than just learning. So that's awesome. Actually, I had this, one of the follow-up questions was that, if you met a 18-year-old today and they are confused that whether they should go for a degree or just start a business right at 18. So I'm even talking, don't even get a bachelor's, but start a business. Do you think that could run in today's world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It ran like, Zuck was like, 19 when he started. There are like enough of these stories.
Those guys,
this is like common wisdom. Yeah.
Those guys almost feel unrelatable because, now they are billionaires, so Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, and that story has been told so many times. But and people just are like, okay, those guys are outliers. But what about the usual, just your average person that is not as smart or anything, but wants to get experience instead of a degree?
I mean, look, I if you look at it from, I'm not even talking about just like, the narrative that's built around like, just go like quit school and you'll be successful or that. I'm even making it mathematical. If you look at expected value, which is the outcome into the probability of success, it's like at 18 or 19, right? You're probably sinking money at that point. So you're negative in that sort, right? And so what's there to lose? You could take a startup, you could raise your money, you could take some portion of that money and pay your bills and live well, have a very low chance of success. But at the end of 4 years, like you have a degree and you have 4 years of startup experience, where is the expected value higher? It is probably the startup. And if you ask any employer and you put yourself in that shoes, you have a person who's done a degree and there are hundreds of them, and you have a person who's done 4 years of a startup in a space and has hustled around. It's just astronomically higher chance for that person who's done a startup to land that next job. So like to me, mathematically, it just makes a ton of sense to take risks very early on in your life, when especially the expected value that you have, which is the amount of money you can earn on the, on your job is low, which kind of flips when you start to be like 45, right? Like, 45, 50, when your expected value is then the numbers might be harder to justify for a startup. And hence then the startup you build really needs to go big to make sense. This is just numerically, but early on, just take disproportionate amount of risks. Like it just mathematically and experience wise is just better.
Brilliant. I 100% agree on that. Just because, you have time on your side and you are not expected, like you said, to make 500K in your first year. So why go negative? Just go. So it's obviously not to say that degrees are completely useless. You should not go to school. You should not get an MBA. But I would really encourage and challenge people to think about taking this route before just like, oh, you know what? I need a change in my career, so I should get a degree. Well, what about actually executing something and trying something out? See if you can already learn by doing all of those things that an MBA would teach you anyway.
Exactly.
Before we go, I have some rapid fire questions for you ready. And the idea is that you can just give like 1-2-liner answers, however you find appropriate. But it's just like this, fun section that I wanted to add. So let's
have some fun.
Let's get right into it. All right. So what is a recent purchase under $100 that has given you a lot of joy in your life, and the specific model and product exact thing will help people if you remember that? Yeah.
So we just had a baby. So it's probably going to be biased towards a baby product.
Oh, why not?
But yeah, so we bought this small product called Hatch. It's like a small device which has like baby music. Our there have been times where our baby is crying and she gets pacified by it. It's her cue that it's time to sleep and relax, and it works like great. It's like how I would listen to Calm, and we just know it's a meditation zone. Somehow it works for her, and it's like it's cheap, and it's been a great, and it's got light in it, so it's got all the basic things that you would put in a room, and so it's a great purchase.
Awesome. I mean, dude, anything that can make that baby sleep, who wouldn't pay $1,000 for that?
Exactly.
We've seen that. Okay. And what is one of your favorite things, like a book, a podcast, a YouTube channel? What is the one favorite thing that comes to your mind that you want to share?
Like my favorite book, podcast,
anything, blog, yeah.
I mean, all of it. Like I consume all things tech, business, on all forms. But I would say in recent time, what's been best is, I mean, the All In podcast. I think, like, I mean, it's like the typical Silicon Valley pop show, I would say.
What was your biggest financial mistake that you consider a financial mistake in the last whatever time you started earning money?
I mean, it's not a very deliberate mistake when I was like doing it, but you can look at it in hindsight. So I was early into crypto, and then I think there was a time that I think we bought coffee or pizza with a Bitcoin, and it was a non-trivial amount of Bitcoin. So
dude.
It was.
Oh my god.
So, but again, like that time we just thought it's like something that just virtual, but it would probably we could have pitched it for like one of the most expensive pizzas or coffees. I don't exactly remember ever. So that was wow. I don't know if it counts as a financial mistake.
It is a gold nugget. I did not know about it. Maybe we didn't talk about it any other time. But this was like a gold nugget. I didn't expect to uncover.
Yeah, it was this restaurant in Palo Alto. I should just go up to them and be like, look, by the way, I don't know what y'all did with that, but it can pay off.
They probably got a baby monitor with it.
Probably.
Oh,
it's
wow.
a chain of events.
What year was that?
It was early. Like we were rational, right? Like so this was when Bitcoin was like sub 100 or something of that.
Oh dear! Oh my gosh! This is so cool.
Yeah, it was like 2014. I think 2013 or something.
You're part of history. You get to say that you bought pizza with Bitcoin. Come on, this is like
actually maybe that should be the tagline.
Right. Okay. Awesome. And actually, I did not think that these two questions would relate, but I just for fun, I like to ask people if they think to cryptocurrency or not. Do you think that cryptocurrency is something that should be invested in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bitcoin is gold, Ethereum is oil. This is what the future will be, right? Like oil is used everywhere. Ethereum will be used for everything, all things blockchain. And then Bitcoin is just like non-tangible gold. It's great. So that's it. Like, and then obviously there are other things you can do with the crypto world, but highly recommend it.
Awesome. We got to talk more about this. That would probably be another interview, another video. So if you had fun today, we can do another series. Awesome.
Happy to chat.
Thank you so much for all of this insight. Truly speaking, I just thought we were going to repeat some conversations, but I learned a lot. So this was great. And before we go, I just want to ask you, like, if there is one piece of advice you have for people just starting out, what would it be?
I would say, like, this is the thing that I tell myself a lot is like risk is not binary. Try to quantify risk, try to understand the math behind risk, and you will start to do a lot more in your life, because your mind tends to block out risk as binary. It doesn't try to model it. I try to model, like, whenever I think something is risky, I try to model it. So that's my like nerdy answer to people is like, don't just tell yourself it's risky, like try to unpack it a bit and you'll do a lot more in your life.
That's awesome. Really, the reason why we don't execute is we are so scared of risk, and you're saying that just put numbers on it, start calculating your risk and then go for it.
Exactly. And then you'll realize that it's actually the downside isn't that high, isn't that bad. Like, I mean, just do the basic stuff and you'll start to realize you're beating your own mind at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Amazing. Vinay, thank you so much. And this was a pleasure. And yeah, let's do this again.
Sounds good. Thanks for the great question.